The Fed has two primary tools that they can use. One is interest rates. So they can influence the overnight rate that banks borrow from each other. That's the Fed funds rate. And what they do is if the economy is too overheated, they'll start to reduce that rate, making it more expensive across the board. There's usually a trickle effect to borrow money. And that tends to curb investment. It tends to send people kind of into a hunker down mentality and cool off the economy. And vice versa. When they cut rates, it's because the economy is sluggish. They want to put liquidity into the system. So it's all about the monetary system. That's what the Fed has control over. The other tool that they have is their balance sheet. So when the government borrows money, so it's Congress's job to authorize borrowing. And when they do this, when they decide to spend money, then they have to print money. And, it's not exactly acceptable just to print money. You have to put it somewhere. So the Fed puts it on their balance sheet. They buy the debt that the U.S. government is issuing, and then they put it on their balance sheet. That gives the government money to spend, and then they earn some interest off of it. And what happens is that all of the debt that they buy has a maturity date. So it can be, the Fed has, and you heard Powell talk about in that clip, they have different maturities. So what happens when they have, it's kind of like if you have a CD and it comes due, what do? Do you go ahead and reinvest it? So you let the lender continue to borrow your money, or do you cash it in and say, I want my money back? That in effect takes it away from the institution that borrowed your money. So when the Fed says that they're going to allow debt to run off their books, it means that they're not going to be buying as much debt. So they're going to let the maturing instruments that they have just mature, and that means that the government has to give them back their money. So it really impacts liquidity in the system, and it could impact the government's ability to borrow. It's not just the Fed that borrows money. There are other borrowers as well. The public, the investment community buys treasuries. We have foreign entities that buy, and the Fed's, the government's pool of buyers has shrunk. The Fed became, overtook China and Japan as buyers of government debt, especially during COVID. And that the Fed is really the one who enabled Congress to inject over $5 trillion into the economy by allowing them to borrow it. And they just put the debt on their balance sheet, and you saw their balance sheet shoot up. So if they decide to let debt roll off and they're not buying as much as they were, then that's going to take money out of the system.